Welcome back, everyone. I apologize. I know that we were planning to do this show live today, but unfortunately, the universe had other plans. So we are jumping on to do a pre-recorded show. And I have some special guests with me today. I've actually had all three of these guests on my show before, and we are going to dive into conscious relationships, attracting healthy and meaningful connections in our lives. So today I have Ryan Gardner with me with Blue Moments Coaching. Ryan is a life coach and a near-death experiencer. Hi, Ryan.
Hi, thank you for inviting me.
And I have Stephanie Zumwalt. Stephanie is with the Higher Self Connection. She is a Beyond Quantum Healing practitioner and an author. Welcome, Steph.
Hi, Tanya. So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
And I also have Steve Noack with me with Trinity Healing Reiki. Steve is a spiritual coach as well as a near-death experiencer. Thank you, Steve, for coming on today.
Hey, thank you for having me. A bunch more in there too. Quantum healer, 0 point practitioner.
Yes, I know. And I think a lot of us are doing quantum healing. Many of us are. So I thought, this was a really nice group of guests to come on because each one of us is going through our own expansion, and we are moving through the phases of this awakening process. And we are all doing the inner work. We are all doing the healing. And so, one thing that I'm starting to recognize with my clients is that this is coming up. They're having a difficult time with their relationships. They're doing a lot of that deep inner healing work, and then they're recognizing that their loved ones around them are not in the same vibration or in the same frequency. So I wanted to tap into this today and really have a deep dive discussion into all types of relationships. So not just intimate relationships, but also friendships, relationships with our kids, and how we can, how we have been navigating through these, these energies, and how we are, not only working through it ourselves, but also helping our loved ones work through this as well. So who wants to start? Out of the three of you, who wants to start and dive into this a little bit more and maybe share some ways that you have been working through navigating, these conscious relationships? Steph.
Everybody raise their hand at once.
Let's go. I know this is a tough topic because I know for me it's difficult and it can be a little scary. And that's why I wanted to put this information out there, because many of us are going through this right now and it's tough to talk about. And
I suppose I can go if you want.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve. Go ahead and share.
I will say becoming the observer of my own experience has helped. Observing myself like, okay, I'm watching a movie. I'm the character in this movie that I'm playing. Do I like how I'm interacting with the other characters? Also understanding that we're part of a large movie, a large play, and that I can only edit my character, but I can't go into other people and edit them. I can make suggestions, but I have to sort of accept their part in this play. Besides resetting and cleansing my nervous system with the things like nature and the practice of exercises.
Yeah,
and that's for starters.
I agree with you on that. And I think, a really fine point to make there is to be the observer and to step back. And I think for me, learning to not engage as much in it, to be able to observe my thoughts and my behaviors and take a step back and say, is this person reacting because of the way that I am putting, my energy out there? And so that's been very helpful.
Understanding that it comes down to me changing my state of being to move into the next step. If there's resistance, no matter what somebody else is doing, it's about me resetting my nervous system to a state of love. Just vibrate as love. That's all I need to focus on, no matter what's going on around me. And that will return me to the correct alignment.
Yeah. And so I think too, at least in my experience, I have always been on a loop. Okay. So I would recognize that I was attracting the same types of partners into my life, the same types of friendships into my life. So this is both male and female. The types of intimate partners that I was attracting were usually people who liked to receive because I liked to give. It was something that I was an overgiver. And so I was attracting people who received a lot and that weren't always comfortable with giving. So then I would get frustrated with myself because I wanted to receive love, from them. And then I was witnessing that I was not. I was the one always giving the love. And so learning to take a step back and look at where the balance was within me, that giving and receiving, and understanding that, okay, I need to learn to receive more. So it opened me up to being able to attract
it allows
more partners.
you to, I think we lost you.
Oh, really?
It allows you to witness the patterns, basically, the constructs that were programmed in your subconscious, things from your parents, Disney, whatever other identities of love that we grew up thinking, hey, that's love.
Absolutely.
Well, and I also think that it has to do with, like, for me, in my experience, with the degree that I loved myself. Like, to the degree that I loved myself was what I was bringing into the relationship. And I just came out of a relationship. And the reason why Tanya and I were talking about doing this podcast is because so many women were going through the same things that I was going through at the same time, but we didn't know what men were going through. It seemed like a bunch of us women were just kind of having this a layer of an awakening. I mean, I've been on the journey of awakening for several years, and this is the first relationship that I came into where I felt that I was more conscious than I had ever been. And it was so different than the relationships I'd had in the past because I was approaching it differently, from a different vibration. My toxic traits were, I didn't love myself. I thought that the only thing I was good for was sex or physical relationships. I thought that that's how, I needed to operate. I thought I needed to be sexual and attract people with my body instead of my intellect or my value or my, inside. And then at the end of the day, I would be left feeling like I was not valued because I wasn't. I didn't let people get deeper with me because I wasn't going deeper with myself. And when I realized that this was still playing out in the relationship that I just left, it was very uneven. It was very out of balance for me. And while I was moving through that relationship, the things that he would provoke within me, I would go inside and heal instead of blaming or being angry with him or manipulating him to do what I wanted him to do, kind of behavior.
That's a good point, because I started to do the same thing. I realized whatever I created as lower energy, I could no longer place outside of me. I had to start giving that to my source, and that corrected the polarity. Eventually we vibrated out of alignment, but it corrected a lot of things I could no longer create with that outside of me.
Yes. And every time I was doing that inner work, I was changing the point of attraction that I had with him. I wasn't, because subconsciously I was attracted to some of these not so great things, needing to feel sexy, needing to feel, I don't know, whatever, I wanted a deeper relationship. And every time I healed the things that I felt I was provoked with, I leveled up a little bit. And then it came to a point, like you said, we vibrated out of alignment with each other, where now I don't connect with him in the way that I did. And
different. You need new sustenance for your new soul,
Yeah.
Pretty much.
So
those
not
old
like
identities died off.
Yeah, not like all of a sudden I'm healed and now I'm going to have an amazing soulmate relationship. I know that the next relationship is going to provoke more things within me to grow from, but hopefully we grow together, not apart. Hopefully that's where I'm headed. So that's what I've been going through.
I like how you brought up how it's really important to observe yourself. And that was something that was a really harsh reality for me to come to accept. So I think the way I did it personally was I didn't necessarily isolate myself in a negative context, but I definitely went into hermit mode because I knew that my energy was going towards other people, whether it was family, whether it was work colleagues or whether it was intimate relationships, I was giving all of my energy to everybody else and completely forgetting myself. And so in order for me to get to where I am now, I had to go internal and almost isolate myself from any external relationship. This was a complete focus on me and myself. And I took everything that every relationship that, you know, had ever taught me. And I looked inside and said, okay, relationships, I believe, are meant to bring our wounds to the surface. That's ultimately what they do. So I looked back over all my relationships and what wounds were brought to the surface with each one of these, and what work do I need to do to heal these wounds, or at least acknowledge them. Maybe not even heal them, at least acknowledge them. And if I'm going to do that type of self-work, I don't want to be distracted. I don't want to be in a relationship. I don't want a girlfriend. I don't want to whatever. I don't want to be around any of that. And even when my family, you know, would, you know, possibly kind of question, like, what's going on with you? You know, like, what are you doing? It's like, I'm discovering myself. That's exactly what I'm doing. And all this energy that I've put everywhere else outward is now going inward. And so if I disappear and I'm off the radar for a while, don't worry, it's a good thing for me.
Yeah, and you're building a conscious relationship with yourself, right?
The most important relationship. And I always, you know, suggest this to my clients. It is the most important relationship is to have with yourself. Even if it looks selfish, it's very selflessly unselfish.
I agree. And many people will think that that's selfish, that I'm going into hermit mode, I'm disconnecting from people, and not doing it out of spite or anger or anything like that. You're doing it because you are, you know, I know for me, I was doing it to master my own energy. I was like, you know, what is my energy? Because for so long I was carrying the energy of others. And so, you know, taking that time to, and I know Ryan, all three of us spend a lot of time in nature. I know nature has been a big healer, you know, for me.
Well, like Ryan said, I also needed like 5 years to discern myself and to really see myself accurately, to not attract from the mother abandonment wounds. I didn't need somebody to do my laundry and make me lunch. I needed somebody that loved me.
And you need to love yourself first, right?
Right. You have to figure yourself out first. You need time to rewrite those neural pathways with the quantum field and start to draw in the love that you are. And then you're not willing to compromise it for, you know, something less.
Right. I like that, Steve, to find out the love that you are, because that is what we are. That is where we came from. Creation is love. And so we embody love. That's what we are. And so many of us lose that. We lose touch with that. Well, I have to earn love. I have to be lovable. In order to be lovable, I need to meet these standards, or I've got to perform this way, or, you know, like you were saying.
Yeah, you got to jump hoops, and love just doesn't work like that.
Give my body away, or I've got to give my soul away, or my money, or what. No, that's all silliness. We are love. And it's, once you can understand that that's what you are, and that's where we come from, then you can
your identity,
bleed it outwards. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And I think too, when we, you know, we love ourselves, we bring that worthiness and that value back, like Steph talked about. You know, when you are trying to find value in others rather than finding value within yourself, it's constantly, you know, I remember in my ex-marriage, it was always about the love tank, you know, the love bank, right? So I always felt like I was doing a lot of withdrawals from my own love bank versus deposits, you know, in my own love bank. And so it got to a point where I was bankrupt in my love bank, you know. I mean, I didn't have enough love to give myself because I was depleting it. And so when we, you know, turn that energy back around onto ourselves, it's almost like we naturally will exude love when we have an overabundance of love and value and worthiness for ourselves. But it takes some conscious understanding, like you said, Ryan, to even acknowledge that that's what we're doing, that we are constantly depleting our own, sense of value and sense of worth, because we are trying to seek it from others, that we're looking for others to give us those deposits.
Yeah. And what the other thing I noticed I was doing in this relationship too, is that I'm very good at, letting other people be who they are, like just detached from needing them. I don't know if I.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay. Not needing them to be different. So like, I don't get upset if people don't text me, call, like if you're out having so much fun that you don't even think about me, I am so excited for you. Like I genuinely am. But when what I ran into is that kind of gets taken for granted or taken advantage of. And so then what I was doing is, with my people pleasing tendencies, not speaking up because I was too afraid of the confrontation to say like, hey, wait a minute though, that's not on me, that was on you kind of behavior. It was a really weird boundary setting lesson for me, is what it felt like.
Yeah, and that's a good point, learning to set boundaries, because I think too, many of us are sensitive and we want to people please. And at least that was my, kind of MO, is I wanted to please my partner rather than pleasing myself, because I felt like you said, Ryan, it's selfish, and we've got to change that mentality that it is selfish. We need to learn, to love within, to go within, and to find that love within ourselves and to connect.
On the subject of boundaries, well, real quick, it's a lot easier to understand that it doesn't have to be harsh. People that love you are going to understand when you tend to yourself, tend to your nervous system, because you're like Ryan said, you're giving back from your heart. Your heart becomes this portal that just pours out love. And when you set boundaries, what I do anyway for myself is I don't allow people in if they're not in a loving vibration, speaking to me lovingly. Like, they don't have to kiss my butt, but they're not going to come in with a lower vibration into my nervous system, because I fought for the integrity and the peace. So once I set that tone, it separates the person from their entity. It separates the person from their lower self. If they want to come communicate with me, you get to see who really loves you, who doesn't. And then you start to correct your inputs and outputs, and you really draw that energy back in yourself.
Yeah, boundaries. I love that. And I think boundaries are so critical in any relationship, including the relationship with yourself. So the way I see a lot of people, when they think of boundaries, look at boundaries as a wall. And I don't see boundaries as a wall. I see it as a space. Boundaries are a space for me to love myself and you at the same time. It allows space for my safety and your safety. So to implement boundaries in a relationship is critical in order to keep your identity and maintain who you are. Without any boundaries, we become who our partner wants us to be. Husbands become what their wife wants them to be. Wives become what their husbands want them to be. Brothers, sisters, however you want to look at it. And we lose our own identity, which we lose our spark. And then we start putting all of our energy into that other person. And then like you were saying, Tonya, our cup becomes empty. And you're just pouring from an empty cup. And we can't do that without draining ourselves completely. It's important to keep our cups full, and boundaries allow that. They allow the cup to stay full.
Because you have your own authentic identity. You know what I mean? You want to have those authentic quantum emissions, those vibrations, those feelings, and to stifle that to just fit into somebody else's is going to drain you.
Absolutely.
And that's what so many people do where they think that they need to act a certain way or fit in. And what we need to remember is that we are all authentic, and this person was attracted to us, or we're attracted to them for their authenticity. And to be anything less is is fake. It's phony. It's superficial. It's not going to work. You're going to end up resenting each other and being frustrated. And then that's when your breakdown in communication, it just goes downhill from there.
Yeah. And even like for the viewers, I also think it's important for people watching, if they're thinking, okay, well, yeah, my boundaries are really good, but sometimes it's really important, I think, to inventory boundaries. And I needed to do that. How many of my boundaries are constructed from wounds or conditioning, or because I was told this was a boundary I was supposed to have? And then how many of my boundaries of that type can I let go of to kind of free myself a little bit and establish my own boundaries rather than the boundaries that everybody else told me I needed to have?
Yeah, I found they change a little with each expansion. We'll expand more into our subconscious. We'll pause and process, place kind of new boundaries. But like you say, we're always growing.
Mm-hmm.
We
And
are.
that's so important to be consistently looking at yourself.
Mhm.
Am I becoming a singular aspect of love? And that's kind of your goal. You come into the body as love, you want to leave as love.
Yeah. And I think too, I know for at least my situation, I grew up in a family where, my mom had a little bit more masculine energy than my dad. And so I was kind of trained as a boundary, that to be a little bit more aggressive as a woman, to be, you don't need a man in your life. You can do it all. And, so I kind of grew up witnessing that. And, our early years from the time we're born to roughly age 7, we're in those theta state years where we are learning how to be in society. We're learning how to function in our relationships. And so for many of my life, I have filled that masculine role in my relationships. So I was attracting men who were more feminine, had more feminine, more nurturing, kind of energies. And so, but it would frustrate me because I wanted to sit in my receiving. It was hard for me to receive. And I know Steph and I have discussed this before, that I wanted a man that was more alpha, but I was attracting more betas, I guess, so to speak. And so for me, it was like, oh my gosh, Tanya, how do you step back from your masculine energy and not, be the one who feels the need to take the reins all the time, to allow yourself to receive in a relationship? And for me, it was just this constant battle. But then I had that aha moment of, I need to fix this and heal this within inside of myself. I need to balance out my energies within inside myself, so then I can attract a more balanced partner in my life. And then once I started doing that, I noticed I was attracting more men who were standing in their masculine power. And I'm like, this is what I've been wanting. But I felt more comfortable to sit back into my feminine energy and receive. Have any of you experienced this before? I know you have, Steph.
Yeah, my problem or my awareness brought me to, as a single mom, and I'd been divorced, and so I kind of had to run the household. Like I had to be the man in the house for my kids. And I was raised by a dad who is very capable and will, if anything breaks, we can fix it. If somebody can fix it, I can fix it. We'll figure it out. And so that is that type of energy in a relationship, when I'm also a Cancer and I'm very nurturing and very tender and very loving. But I felt like I had to have a wall up with that, because I couldn't depend on anybody, is what it felt like. But I'm pretty sure that it's because I wasn't allowing that. I wasn't allowing the men in my life to be masculine, because I didn't think I could trust them, because that was a wound,
Mm-hmm.
So it's very interesting. So I feel like I'm coming into my feminine energy more, and wondering what that looks like for men that go through the healing of their wounds, a healed masculine.
I would say I wouldn't allow women to love me. Whenever it got to the feeling of love, it scared the hell out of me.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, like, your parents are supposed to love you. You grow up in a house where your mom did all these unspeakable things. You wake up in the middle of the night, nobody's around, you're walking the streets at 3 years old in the dark. There were so many things that's about love that scared me. And it took a while to correct that and allow that feeling coming from a person to enter my system.
Interesting.
Well, yeah, and
I had to look at it differently.
Yeah, we're taught what love means at a very young age, you know, and we don't even think, I don't even think we don't even realize that we're being taught that that's the love, right? Like you said, those first 8 years of life, you are in those theta brain waves, and it's like hypnotism.
It is.
You know, we're an empty hard drive. And so you see mom and dad fighting and screaming in the kitchen, or one's calling one names, or the other one gives the silent treatment. And they may do it to each other, or they may also do it to you as a child. And then at night, it's like, good night, I love you. And you're like, okay, well, I suppose this is what love is. And then I also, like, I see maybe dad leaves notes for mom saying, I love you, I hope you have a great day. And then comes home from work, ignores her, tell her the dinner sucks. And you know, that he doesn't like her outfit and how you looks like you've gained a little bit of weight, but I love you.
Yeah.
It's like we're learning that, okay, well, I guess the way we express love is in all of these negative ways. Like, is that what love is? What is love? So I think even the definition of love gets so convoluted and distorted that by the time we reach our late teens, our early 20s, our mid 20s, we're like, what is love? What way
is
I
love?
was shown love is certainly not what they're showing in the movies or what the song is telling me is love. Like,
Right.
No, not what I witnessed when I was young. That's for
right,
sure.
right.
But I didn't know it was so foreign by the time I had gotten to it. I had dated so many women. It was like, okay, what's wrong with me? I got to the point where I was like, what is wrong with me? And that's when everything turned around.
See, and I had a great example of love when I was growing up. My parents, I felt, modeled it very well for me. I didn't have those challenges. I'm grateful that I didn't. But I screwed my own vision up when I became an adult. I was so sheltered from like experiences outside of my own house and my own family that I kind of just went off the rails. And then I allowed the external to teach me a different view of love, I guess. I didn't stick with what my parents were showing me. I wanted to find that. I wanted that badly, but I just figured that times had changed and that's not the way it goes anymore. And I'm no good. I'm not worthy. All of those things.
For me, it was a lot of the unworthiness, like being told you were supposed to be a girl when you were born, just all this pre-programmed stuff in my subconscious mind, because I'd never gone there and done the healing, wouldn't allow space for what was coming in, you know? It's like the waking consciousness being the operating system, like Brian said, subconscious being a hard drive. My hard drive was full of crap.
Yeah, it's funny.
Well, you need that time.
Yeah, you say that. I was the same. My parents thought I was going to be a boy. I was named Christopher. So all the clothes that I wore were green and yellow because, and then you look at my sister and she's all pink and froofy, and she's super feminine, but it's, and we can't blame our parents because they were taught based off of their generational patterns. It's just like Ryan said, bringing it to the conscious mind and being aware that these are the patterns that we are experiencing.
That allowed me to witness what had happened in their marriage and other things like that I was repeating. And I was like, holy crap. I got to the point where I was like, no woman deserves what my mom did to me, what happened here in the past. They have enough of their own to process, but I was able to step back and witness those patterns.
Yeah, it was a really amazing time for me, and it happened rather late in life. Not too long ago. I mean, maybe 10 years ago, where I actually looked at my parents and I was like, they're human. Because I'd always seen them as these pillars of strength and these perfect archetypes of what a man's supposed to be and what a woman's supposed to be, right? Like,
right on.
Old. And I'm like, they've both, disclaimer, I love you, mom and dad. I know you're going to watch this. But,
we all love our mom and dads.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But we all sometimes fail miserably in that expression. And it's because we're all coming from our own walk, our own story, our own conditions, generational curses, which are passed down, from our ancestors, wherever they are, So we carry these with us. And I truly believe that people are always doing the best that they can based on what they know, where they're at, and what they've learned, So I don't look at my parents and I have, bad feelings towards them. I don't look at them and think, oh, they're horrible people. I'm like, no, they've been on their journey and they've learned so much. And I mean, my parents are still together. They're still married. Occasionally you'll hear my mom say, oh, I wonder what happened if I would have divorced 30 years ago, like I really wanted to, I don't know, who knows what would have happened, but they stuck it out, and yeah, so I'm not exactly sure what.
Yeah, and my folks were still married too. We just lost my mom a year ago this week, and they were married for 54 years, and they loved each other. They were in love with each other. But the problem that got seated in my psyche, I guess, when I was growing up, is that other people's love came first. I need to be on the back burner. Don't be selfish. Don't, your needs can wait. You need to let other people, get whatever first. And so that was really deeply rooted in me. And I had this same experience as you did, Ryan, where I realized, oh, they just have wounds. Like they just have filters too, and perspectives and experiences from their own child. My parents' childhood was awful compared to what they gave me. And
Right.
The fact that they were doing as well as they did by the time my mom passed away is a shock to me. But my dad, I mean, they just loved each other. They just do. But me trying to get past that wound, and my parents instilled it in my sister as well. And so kind of pitted us against each other. And so I always felt like I had to sit back and my needs aren't important. They'll get tended to when they do, kind of thing. And so that was what I needed to really clear up within myself, to where I felt comfortable saying, hey, this is what I need, and this is what I want, and this is what I desire, and it's okay. I don't need to be put behind anyone else.
No, I got to the point where I was incredibly thankful for everything. And I'm not saying there wasn't loving moments, of course, but I realized that I needed all that knowledge and all that discernment, drifting from dense to light and all that stuff. My father worked a lot. So it was like, nobody was really there. So I sought my attention through women, and it was the wrong place. It was supposed to be from God, you know what I mean? But you replay that sort of, okay, I never got this filling. This is where I'm supposed to get love from. It's a woman. Now I'm going to try to get that filling, and you're sort of running on this program.
And it's scary.
You heal it.
It's scary. Yeah. Because I don't know for all men, but I know there are some men that were thinking that, obviously the ones that I was in a relationship with were thinking the same way that I was, of like, sex rate, is the thing. It's if you, aren't having sex or connecting in that way, or if I'm not making her, feel a certain way sexually, then I'm not valuable to her. She'll just go and find somebody else that can. When in the end of the day, it had nothing to do with any of that. It has to do with how how we're connecting on a deeper level. Like I want to be seen and valued for the vastness of me, instead of, and I don't need it, but you know what I mean? It's a really, I'm in a weird place right now.
I mean,
like
it's more intimacy, right?
Yes.
What Ryan said about the parents only getting a certain awareness, and we have to accept them for what they are, human. And it was true. It took me a long time to do that, but they were raised with wounds too. Their parents, their parents, their parents, and we're the ones that break them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And like you were saying also, how you were grateful for some of them. I've actually reached that point into my life where I am extremely grateful for all of my parents' wounds.
Mm-hmm.
they've taught me and opened my eyes and given me an awareness of my mission now. They did their best. I'm aware of this. Now it's my turn. And what can I do to break certain generational curses? Going back to intimacy and sexuality and things like that, sexual energy is so powerful. It's enormous, right? Like, and it's so much more than just sex. Mm-hmm. Right? People think sexual intimacy or sexual energy, and immediately they're like, well, okay, I'm in bed naked with somebody. No, sexuality.
Or they say it's love, right?
Or they say it's love. And it's so much deeper than that. It's an intimate connection, and sexuality is actually healing energy. It's all in our sacral chakra there, which is
a sacred energetic
creativity and
creative, creative life force.
Beautiful energy. And that's where I think, some of the disconnect has happened with men over the years, is their definition of sexuality and what it means to them, and men not embracing their divine feminine, right? Their creativity,
they can't
their
appreciate how sacred it is.
Forgiving, the heart-centered, intuitive, nurturing, healing. That's all around sexual healing.
Yes,
and I think
energetic.
And I think that I heard something recently about how this, like I said, there were a bunch of women that were going through these breakups, and a lot of it was like, we were stepping into our divine feminine, like really feeling that surge rising up. And I'm not talking about societal things going on. I'm talking about the energy of creation. And we were really embodying that, but the relationships that we were in were not in their divine masculine, and they didn't have their healed divine feminine energy like you're talking about, Ryan. And that is what is curious to me. Like, what is that, for men? What are men healing? Is that the mother wounds? What is that men are working on to become more conscious in that area?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would start by the traits, of a healthy masculine who is developed in all the archetypes: the king, the magician, the lover, the warrior, and what does that look like? I mean, masculine energy is action. It's risk, it's discipline, it's boundaries, it's structure, it's self-control, it's outward, where, the feminine energy is more intuitive. Like, I was saying before, it's more receptive. And a lot of men are underdeveloped in their masculinity. And it's really not their fault. It comes back to inner childhood wounds. And so I would encourage men to research and look around at what is a masculine, what is masculine energy, and how do I embody this masculine energy? And am I underdeveloped in some areas? Am I overdeveloped? Have I become a tyrant? Have I become a trickster? What have I become? I also think at the same time that, women, feminine energy has been suppressed. There's no doubt about that. And that's because of, I believe, the underdeveloped masculine. And it starts with the patriarchy that goes all the way back to the beginning. Mm-hmm. But I've also noticed that the feminine is now adopting the unhealthy masculine energies, trying to fight back.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And that's not going to work.
No,
not going to work.
And it's not fun. It doesn't.
And we don't want to.
It doesn't feel natural, right?
No, and we don't want to do that.
We all possess both, right?
Right.
Like, masculine and feminine is not gender. It's energy. Right. And so we all possess both, and it's bringing them together in a union and letting them work in harmony. And it's not easy. It's
No.
not easy.
No, it's like a
work.
divine dance, it's like, just when you have your masculine and feminine energy balanced and you meet someone who does, talk about sexual energy, talk about
The
creation.
cosmos are dancing.
Oh
They
my
love it.
gosh. It's,
Hey, I'm excited for that.
me too. You too.
Bring it on. I'm so excited for that. Seriously, because it's true. I don't want to be, I don't want to be in that energy. I want to be balanced. And I want somebody that is balanced also. And I believe that, Ryan, what you just said is so important for men to understand to the deepest abilities. They need this information to be out there. I don't know if there is a space that is growing with that. I hope it is. Obviously I don't go searching for those topics, but
they also need the tools too.
Yes.
To be able to do the work within themselves and move consciousness and understand those traits that need to be corrected.
Yeah, and I think society is
really find harmony,
yeah,
with all of creation.
Right.
Absolutely. And I feel that society has kind of made, men moving more into their divine feminine like a weakness, and it's not. I mean, it's actually very attractive when a man is balanced in their masculine and feminine energies.
Do you know how bad it messed me up to stuff all those feelings down that I was having? Oh, kitten was cute. That cloud is pretty, but you couldn't say it around your friends. You couldn't, so I just stuffed my natural feelings down.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think, and I was the opposite. It was just, it was almost like I had reverse polarities and, but I, like we talked about earlier, we've got to look at our parents in their childlike form. I mean, my parents had me in their early 20s. I mean, come on, if I had kids in my early 20s, I was clubbing. I was in Daytona Beach. I was living my best life, back then. I mean, I can't imagine raising a child, 2 children, me and my sister in my 20s, so you've got to think, based off of our parents and where they were at that time, they were children raising me, and so of course there was just this total imbalance of energies that I carried on through my adult life. And my gosh, it's like, finally, I'm starting to learn that I've got to balance.
When I had my older daughter, I was only 22. So I definitely was not prepared. I abandoned myself. I sabotaged it. In my mind, I couldn't even form an image of being a father. And I showed up, but not as much as I could have if I showed up for myself.
See, I had my daughter when I was 20 and I I created some wounds with her. I unfortunately, and we've done a lot of work together to heal. I've been able to apologize and really make amends for the things that she went through, because I was still running around trying to figure out how I could be loved unconsciously. And it created a lot of drama for her, unfortunately, but she's a warrior because of it, and she's learning. So
yeah, I didn't have my first child until I was in my late 20s, 28, 29. And I think it's important to celebrate our evolvement and our evolution that we have made as individuals, because I am a much different parent today than I was 15 years ago.
Yeah, me too.
Right. And it's really important to recognize that and see how far we've come and let our children identify that also. Because my daughter, my oldest, she's 18 now, would say to me, "Dad, you're a completely different dad than you were when I was 8. And I'm like, awesome. Let's celebrate that. That's fantastic. That's the work that Daddy's put into himself to be
and
that.
That's you stepping into those archetypes and those traits and being able to show up,
And then hopefully it just continues, because certainly I conditioned her in a certain way. And now I'm conditioning my son, who's much younger than her, in a different way. So they're both having they've both got a different dad that raised them, a completely different dad on both ends. But, you know, they can continue that evolving and that healing. And collectively, the whole freaking planet needs to heal when it comes to this, you know,
Yes.
but that's got to start with each person. Each person has to do their part.
Yeah, individual responsibility. I mean, it's a planetary cleanse, whether they like it or not. So as much as they resist, that's the harder it's going to be to really maintain and sustain those lower frequencies. That's why we see what we're seeing on the planet now.
And that conditioning can change. I mean, whether you're 20, you're 40, you're 60, you can heal those wounds. You can, like you said, Ryan, you know, you were a different dad when she was 8 versus when she's 18. You can change. You can shift that, and you can, you know, apologize. You can heal. You can show through action, through that divine masculine, that I am changing. I am expanding myself. I am growing. And your daughter's witnessing that.
Yeah, he's holding the frequency, and then we have to do the soul work to arrive at that space to hold it.
And I'll
well,
also
here we
mention,
are. We're still humans, right? Nobody's claiming to be perfect. We all know perfection doesn't exist in this 3D world. So, of course, I still make mistakes. And I listen. I'm not closed off when my son or my daughter says, Dad, I didn't really like that, or that didn't feel right to me. It's not a, don't talk to me that way. I don't want to hear it. It's more of a open. It's wide open. My kids can come to me and say, hey, Dad, this is how I felt. Awesome. I'm so glad that you're able to express that and you feel safe. You can be vulnerable with me and know that I'm not going to lash out at you or, you know, tell you that
and
you're
understanding and teaching our kids that everyone has a perspective, and no matter
Yes.
what, your perspective is your truth. You know,
Absolutely.
it's your reality. And so my kids, I have 3 kids. My daughter's almost, she's 27. I have a 22-year-old and then a 13-year-old. So you're talking about kids having different experiences. They're different mothers. Each one of my kids has a different mother and had a different childhood. But my daughter's perspective of things when she was growing up, well, I didn't want to admit that to be true. It was her perspective and it was her reality. And I need to be open to that and understanding what that felt like for her so that I can have a conversation about where I maybe would have chosen differently, because everybody is, like you said, doing the best that they can at the time with the knowledge that they have and the awareness that they have. But as time goes on, obviously that shifts and that changes. And I can say, listen, yeah, if it were different, I wish I could do it again, but I can't. If I could, this is what I would have done, you know, and have that conversation, because that will help her expand and grow and transform too.
You know, I didn't realize, like with my younger daughter, or actually my older daughter rather, that I had to give her a safe space to grow in, that she had to have her own space to express herself. And I was able to correct that. And like Ryan mentioned, be a much different dad with the younger one, who's 11 now, and actually give her a safe space of expression for whatever feeling she has, you know, and it's made a big difference.
Yeah.
And that's what conscious relationships are all about, is recognizing that and, you know, seeing that within yourself, and now being able to, you know, show that to your children, you know, and not
only that, like as they're giving you stuff, if there's things rising up in you, you don't give that to your child. You keep that and you discern that with your spirit, and that's that internal processor. But it's just holding that space and allowing them to be themselves. Whether it disturbs you or not, if it disturbs us, then we have something to heal or some sort of wound that we're highlighting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so often we think our children belong to us.
Yeah.
And they don't. They come through us, but they don't belong to us.
Yeah.
Right?
No, we're here to keep them as love for as long as we can. And that's it. We're basically entrusted with them, I think.
Right. Yeah. There's an awesome poem on children by Khalil Gibran. And it's, our children are the arrows, we're the bow, and the archer is life. And as bows, we need to be bendable and flexible so life, the archer, can pull us back and release our arrows wherever they're intended, wherever life intends them to go.
That's beautiful.
I love that. I love that. That's awesome. And, you know, I do. I think, you know, our kids are little reflections of us, right? So, you know, whatever we have taught them.
Right?
They're
like,
little minis.
Oh, I thought I fixed that part. No, what's happening?
Yeah,
but it's like,
I just keep telling my kids, I'm like, you chose me, so you got to figure that out.
You chose me at a soul level to experience
this was a contract you made long before you got here.
I just got to be me, and you figure it out. I don't know.
That's funny. And I think, you know, I think it's so important to have these discussions because, and I think too, communication, I didn't have that in my childhood. My mom, she was a middle child and she, you know, she grew up in the era where you don't speak unless you're spoken to, right? So her throat chakra was just shut off. And so when I was a kid, her throat chakra was on full 200% hardcore. So I could never get a word in, you know, edgewise. And so then when I became an adult, my throat chakra was wide open and I couldn't shut up, you know? So it's like, okay, I'm seeing this pattern within myself. And now I need to learn to heal these aspects that were carried on from her past into my past. And so I think too, you know, we are just learning to communicate, and communication is speaking and listening, you know, and I think that's really important. As a parent, sometimes we think we just have to tell our kids what to do without sitting back and actually listening to what our kids are going through and how they're experiencing life, right?
I mean, honestly, I can say my children are one of my greatest teachers.
Absolutely. Their consciousness is so expanded, even beyond ours being born. It's incredible how much data they're processing. They just need the tools.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Love.
And they look to us for those tools, right?
Yeah, but that brings me to something else, is like, you can't, like, respecting each other's journey. Like, you have to allow them to go through what they're going to go through and not try to interfere too much. You know, I feel like sometimes, especially when we go through our own healing journey, we think we got it figured out and we want everybody to have it figured out. And so then you just shove it all down their throat, whether they're ready for it or not. And then that just pushes them away. It's like, there's a balance there too. Of just
you have to let
witnessing.
them experience their contrast.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they have to form that contrast to learn from. That's hard to watch.
It's really hard to watch sometimes, but you got to respect it and be there and listen without judgment and just be a safe space to fall, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Respect it, be a safe place. And I always like to remind myself that my children are protected.
Mm-hmm.
My children are protected outside of me,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
They've got their own guides watching over them. They've got their own higher self, and it is developing. And it's my position as their father to create space for them to develop that, give them guidance, but not try to make them like me, but even to strive to be more like them.
They're like plants, I've found. It's like you can drop a little seed, you can give it a little water, but you can't overwater it. You know, it's like I'm looking for these little experiences where I can drop a seed for when they are in a certain place in their adulthood, and they can draw from that later, not giving them too much.
Yeah, my middle son is going through a period in his life where he's searching, and masculinity has come up. And like I say, he's raised by a single mom, and he does have my dad as a role model, but so he's kind of trying to figure out what that looks like for him. And he inserts these patterns once in a while that I've seen that are shocking to me, because that's not how I taught him. But I just say in the back, and like, instead of getting triggered or upset or whatever, having, you know, I'm just trying to let him go the way that he needs to go, and remind myself of the parts of him that I want him to not forget, I guess. Like, reminding myself, oh, he's a compassionate kid. He's got a good head on his shoulders. You know, he is very balanced, and I know he's finding his way, kind of thing, and try to just let it unfold.
There's so many things in the world that want to decide their identity, our identity for us. And I think that brings us back to why it's important to let them know as often as we can that your identity is love as an energy.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Steve, you keep bringing that word up, and I love that you do that. That is so awesome. Love. You don't hear a lot of men even use that word these days.
Yeah.
You know, so to hear you say that, and to hear other people say that, and to try and exemplify that for other people, everything positive is sourced from love.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
What would love do?
It's so
always
true.
What would love do?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And
And
during my NDE, I was shown that we spend this love energy to process realities through bands of information. And we spend here, spend there, but we are pure love. I was in the middle of like a medicine wheel or something.
That's awesome. And, you know, if you're struggling with life, speak to a 4-year-old, right? So
Yes.
they always bring it back to love, right? They bring it back to compassion, unconditional love. They're so close to source, our children, and they're coming in at higher and higher frequencies, you know, and these kids have so much knowledge and so much information. I mean, I can sit down with a 7-year-old and have a much more meaningful conversation sometimes than I do with a 50-year-old.
Yeah, that's
you know?
beautiful, right?
Yes. And you're like, God, they keep it so simple. It just breaks it back down to love.
I love kids, man.
I do too.
I have 2 grandkids now, and my granddaughter is 6 and my grandson's 4, and they both came over to stay the night recently, and there was a bug out on the porch, and my little grandson Dustin stepped on it and killed it, and Macy, my granddaughter, goes, "Why'd you do that? He's just trying to live his life." And it was the cutest thing. So innocent.
They're so still connected to that empathy and that, because they are such a big part of creation. They haven't formed a lot of separation yet, you know?
Yep. It's
That
beautiful.
was the little warrior archetype coming out of the little warrior.
Yeah. It's like we're all
You're
Benjamin
right.
Button, right? We're all just
Right.
trying to go through our life, getting back to our childhood.
Go back
state.
there.
Right.
Yes, totally.
I think another big part of that too is like the young men coming up, they really don't have ways to prove themselves anymore. So sometimes they fall into the patterns where they're trying to prove their masculinity through ways that they really shouldn't be, or they really can't be.
Oh,
You know?
that's so powerful. That's true.
Mhm.
There's no more warrior tribes, hunting, gatherers, things like that. I mean, there are, but they're far and few.
Mhm.
The initiation kind of process has been stolen. You know, and that's because of a lack of developed masculines today.
Yeah.
So what are some things that, you know, Steve and Ryan, that you feel that you can share with men today that will help them, you know, balance out these energies? What are some things that you feel that would be valuable, you know, advice?
I would say tap into your feelings and be vulnerability. And also not worrying, trying not to worry about what other people think so much, right? And for me, the easiest way to do that was to disconnect. It goes back to my original story of me, you know, finding this path that I'm on. It's disconnecting a little bit from society and what society has taught me my whole life, you know. And really, I find in meditation, I can find a lot of those emotions that just want to come to the surface that have been so suppressed for so many years. So I think meditation is extremely important. I also think gratitude is a very powerful emotion. It brings a lot of other emotions to the surface. And, you know, like I have my clients write 3 things that they're grateful for every day. And for the first 3 or 4 weeks, it's like my truck, my boots, you know, my dog, my house. And I'm like, okay, every single day we've got 3. And then eventually it's like the flowers,
Mhm.
the sun, the warmth, gratitude. I'm grateful for gratitude. And they start tapping more into that feminine energy. So I don't know. I mean,
I love that. Those
just
are
to kind of
all.
keep it brief.
No,
That's
that's
what I would
perfect.
Well, and disconnect, I think, too, from it. I mean, not just the people around you, but also the behaviors that you're just on autopilot with. You know,
Yeah.
what are you doing with your time, and how is it serving you, and why are you doing it? And just really being aware of the present moment, you know, being in the present moment and really understanding why you do what you do. My journey has always been about what motivation do I have for this behavior or this step that I'm taking? You know, what is the underlying motivation? What am I trying to get out of this? Is it trying to feed something in me, or am I trying to grow or expand or help, or, you know, just really explore inside what's going on for me as a feminine?
And not disconnecting in a fight, flight, or freeze response, but disconnecting in a healing response, right? You're like, I'm not going to disconnect from my relationship because I'm going to ignore, right, all of the triggers that are happening or the things that are coming up, but to actually disconnect so you can work on yourself and you can heal. There's a big difference there.
I think meditation is a very powerful way to do that. Meditation, journaling, coloring. There's a lot of these things that men could start doing. And, you know, for any women out there that are watching this, that have men in their lives that are concerned about this kind of stuff, buy them a coloring book.
I think that's
Hey, do me a
absolutely,
favor,
because that, you know what that does,
So-
it connects both the right and left hemispheres of the brain, which is our masculine and feminine energies.
So that's a good point. I'll come in and answer your question on the masculine. What really helped me was reconnecting with my inner child, was doing all these things that I did as not only as a child, but connecting to it as a mirror of myself. I have this original image. It's a child. It's inside me. It's made out of love. Then I began inputting commands with my mind. Inner child, become present. Thank you. Inner child, please show me what love feels like. Please show me what joy feels like. Show me what excitement feels like. And I will get these flashes all the way through my nervous system. And eventually, like Ryan was talking about with the gratitude, you become that. You become these feelings you're introducing into your system, and you're in control of that. But doing the things like adventure through the woods, go explore here, go do this, that I did as a child without worrying about what others thought, brought me such pure joy and happiness that I could spontaneously combust at times just to be alive and be a part of this place. You know, so it was a lot of inner child work, but putting it into motion. It's not enough to say, I'm going to work with my inner child, do this. At least for me, I want to input commands into my computational system, because that's what we are, a computational being, basically.
Yeah, and I
tell
think
myself how to enlighten my own system.
absolutely.
So
And
good.
I also
I
think too,
that's great.
Yeah.
Disconnecting from the things I was like just saying, disconnect from this, and you nailed it right on the head. Disconnect from this, reconnect with your child.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like correcting those inputs and outputs.
Yep.
absolutely. And reestablishing what intimacy means to us. Into me, I see, right? So it's getting within that intimate relationship with our inner child, right? Going back and healing that aspect within ourselves, because like we talked about before, many of us have a misconception or a manipulated kind of version of what intimacy is, and learning how to go back and find those intimate moments with ourselves, with nature, and really connecting, you know, on a much deeper,
it's
more
like
meaningful
I can
level.
laugh again. I can laugh again and do all these things that I was numb to before.
Yeah.
You know, and I reconnected my neural pathways to the quantum field, and I understood that was my dispensation of love, that I didn't need to have all these links out here, like Ryan was talking about, and out here to get it back. I now became a more singular self, and I can give more back to the people I do love.
Mhm.
Because all you need is within. We have all we need. And once we connect to that, it changes everything. It changes
Mhm.
everything.
It does. Well, this was an amazing conversation today, and I'm sure we could even go longer. There's so many, concepts around this topic with conscious relationships, but I feel like we touched on intimacy, we touched on relationships, we touched on children. I really do feel like we tried to cover a broad variety of topics, and I hope for all of you listening that this was helpful. And so I want to just have each of you go around and share what it is that you do and how people can contact you if people resonate and they feel that they want to reach out to you and they want to learn more. So Steph, how can people reach out to you?
You can find me on Facebook. You can also, I have a website, stephaniezumwalt.com. I'm writing a book, The Higher Self Connection, that should be out this fall sometime, hopefully. And yeah, I mean, I'm not really working with clients right now, but you can follow my podcast to get more information on the things that I'm going through and what I'm learning. And hopefully it helps some of you.
Thanks, Steph. How about you, Steve?
You can find me at trinityhealingreiki.com. I work with 0 Point Energy. That's just kind of like the old name of the site when I set it up. You can find me on Facebook at Trinity Healing. My phone number should be there. I also want to add in, whatever you're doing, do it consistently. Don't give up on it. Don't do it once or twice, think it's going to work, because you're releasing patterns you've done consistently for years. So you want to now set a pattern consistently to replace that. But yeah, Trinity Healing Reiki.
Thanks, Steve. How about you, Ryan?
Yeah, so I do life coaching. You can find me on Facebook, just at Ryan Gardner, or Blue Moments Coaching. I primarily focus on life purpose, spirituality, life balance, and you can reach me at bluemomentscoaching@gmail.com.
Great. Well, I appreciate all of you for spending time with me today. I know this was, the stars had to align for all four of us to come together today. And I do appreciate each and every one of you for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge and your experiences, because I know this was a vulnerable podcast today, for sure. I know it was for me. It's not always comfortable to be able to share some of the experiences that we've gone through. And I appreciate each and every one of you. And for all of you listeners and viewers out there, again, I hope that you can get a little bit of information or some tidbits of things that you can utilize in your daily life that can help you improve your relationships in the way that you connect and interact in this world. So thank you all so very much.